Hello, my name is John Hart, and this recording is for students in the IHP 340 class. And I'll be going through this paper as an example of what you'll be asked to do going through various papers. And I'll include some examples of what you'll be asked about in particular. This paper is about a study. They looked at the relationship between resting heart rate and different types of mortality. So in the first part, we have the abstract, which is, of course, a summary of the paper. And one of the things you'll be asked about is purpose of the paper. And the purpose of the paper can be found at the beginning of the abstract, typically, or in the introduction. So in this example, aims is another term for purpose, and we see here that the purpose is you can kind of tell the purpose in the title. Look at resting heart rate and these types of mortality. You don't have to necessarily include each type of mortality, but it's best to put it in your own words. If you do use exact wording, if you, for example, copy and paste that into a Word document, you'll be expected to use quotation marks at the beginning and end of the part you're using verbatim, and as well as include in-text citation. So check your Turnitin reports after you submit, and if you have a full sentence or more that's the same, then get your quotes on it or reword it, and then resubmit your document with a note indicating which version you'd like to have graded. Research question may not be apparent, but a purpose statement could be changed into a research question, which would be stated as, what is the relationship between resting heart rate and various types of mortality? And a hypothesis statement, it may not be apparent. So if you're unable to find these things, just simply say so in your report that you did not see a hypothesis statement, and therefore you're unable to comment on what the research thought the hypothesis was. So that's what they thought. They should, if they want people to know about what they were thinking the hypothesis was, then they should state it. I don't see a hypothesis statement in this paper. So the introduction, you can always also see what the purpose statement, so that's probably the most often item among those three stated a purpose statement. And that's usually found in the methods section, which is at the beginning of the main body of the paper, or the introduction section. Usually has those three items. Next section is methods, and here you'll be asked about data collect. When you're asked about data collection, you'll be able to find that in this section. So one of the methods is a survey using this test, the Spandau Health Test, and you can include years and the cities here if you'd like, but at minimum here I would think at least survey. So you don't have to include all the information, but just enough so that the instructor can tell that you went hunting for the information and you found some information. Other methods of data collection, of course, the resting heart rate was measured. You can include this other information if you like, but resting heart rate, going back to the title, is the main area of interest for measurement. Method of analysis, you'll be also asked about. So some papers might have a subheading called data analysis or analysis, but here we don't see a subheading, but we see the word analysis in this paragraph, and they calculated mortality rates. So that would be one answer. If you want to include other information, you could say for the mortality rates by these 8 heart rate groups. And they also used more complicated statistics, hazard and risk ratio. Is this an experimental or an observational study? Going back to methods up here, for experimental studies, a keyword is randomize, or randomization. If the participants were randomized, and I don't see that term here, so it defaults to observational study. Results. Averages are a common. Average is a common statistic in results. So here we see mean or average is another. Mean is another term for average, of course. Heart rate of 70 beats per minute for men and 73 for women. You'll also sometimes be asked about difference between groups. Well, here we have we have 2 groups by gender, and we have a difference here of heart rate of 3 beats per minute. Another thing you'll be asked about is whether the results are statistically significant. And in order to comment on whether results are statistically significant, you must have a p-value. If there's no p-value reported, and then that's your statement in your report that you did not see a p-value, and therefore you are unable to comment on whether the results were statistically significant. And a p-value, P stands for probability, and that gives you the probability of whether the results happen by, essentially, whether the results happen by chance or not. For example, this here. Did that happen by chance or not? So a low p-value indicates a low probability that it happened by chance, and that there's some other reason besides chance. So I don't see a p-value under results here, but keep looking. I don't see it in this table or this one, but I see it in this one. I have highlighted between here we have 2 groups by heart rate, less than 80 beats per minute, more than 80 beats per minute. Up here we had 5 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and table 4 we had 4 groups, and they're comparing hazard ratios and all-cause mortality for these 2 groups, and it's statistically significant, comparing the cholesterol between the 2 groups by heartbeat, and non-smokers versus smokers, non-smokers less than 80, and non-smokers greater than or equal to 80 had higher hazard scores, same with smokers, and that was statistically significant. This top part is for men, and women over here, not sure why they did not have smoking for women. Maybe not enough participants smoked, but we'd have to take a closer look in the paper to see if they mention why they did not include smoking down here. So for women, statistically significant difference over here, but if our cutoff is 0.05, which that usually is for p-values, and this is close, but still technically not statistically significant. Same with this one up here. This is definitely not statistically significant, 0.790. Is the data qualitative or quantitative in this study? Another term for qualitative is categories. Here we have categories by gender, men and women. So that tells us that data are arranged by category, or they're qualitative data. But it also can include the other type, quantitative. Another term for that is continuous data. And continuous data has lots of possibilities. For example, heart rate. These are averages here, but heart rate could range from 50 to 100 and includes all possibilities in between, 51, 52, 53. So other examples of continuous variables: blood pressure, height, weight, temperature. So in answer to the question, does this study have qualitative or quantitative? It has both, and you would give examples. Example of qualitative would be data by gender, two groups, and quantitative would be the heart rate, and blood pressure is another example. And that concludes this video presentation. Thank you for watching.